Using cash envelopes has been such a game changer in transforming my finances. I was able to pay off a huge chunk of credit card debt and built up my savings and emergency fund. So in this video, I'll walk you through how to set yourself up for financial success using the cash envelope system. Let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome if you're new. My name is Marianne and I am the owner of the Minimalistic Budget. I have been getting a ton of questions about the cash envelope system and how it works. So I'll make this a super simple yet comprehensive guide for those of you who do want to get started. I also just want to put a little disclaimer that I am not a financial advisor. I'm just a regular person trying to budget her way out of debt. Now that's out of the way, let's get into how I started cash budgeting. So in a nutshell, I have always been an emotional and impulsive spender. I didn't really know how to manage my money and I wasn't really taught how to manage my finances at home or in school. So as soon as I got my first job and my first credit card, I just spent all my paychecks on BS. I didn't put any money towards savings and I also didn't know how credit cards worked. So I was accumulating credit card debt at the end of each month, so I would be paying interest on all those balances. I don't recommend this by the way, I would spend my student grants on BS. And I wish I had saved up all of that money because at that time I didn't really have that many obligations. Like I didn't have to pay for rent or any utilities. I didn't really have a ton of bills except for my phone bill. So a lot of that money could have gone towards my credit card debt, towards my savings, or even my emergency fund. So fast forward to 2019, that's when I discovered the cash envelope system through the Dave Ramsey show. I thought it was a super neat idea. I even binge watched a ton of cash stuffing videos because they're just so addicting to watch. So then I ended up purchasing my very first set of cash envelopes through Etsy, and I even had my little accordion folder set up with all of my categories. And it was great at first. I even had a routine set up for every payday, but then lockdown happened and I kind of went back into my old spending habits. So fast forward again to September of 2022, I got into the habit of cash stuffing again. I was able to build up my savings and also my emergency fund, and I also paid off 4 out of 5 credit cards. I know I do still have a huge chunk of student loans to pay off, but if I hadn't started cash budgeting again, I wouldn't even know where my finances would be at today. So that's just a gist of my story and how I got into cash budgeting. Now let's start with the basics. So first off, what is the cash envelope system? So basically it is a budgeting method where you divide your paychecks into different categories like gas, groceries, utilities, transportation, all of that, and you're physically placing the designated amount of cash for each category into its own separate envelope. From there, you can use the cash from each envelope when you need to, and when the money in that envelope is gone, you basically stop spending money in that envelope until your next paycheck. So now I'm going to walk you through the benefits of the cash stuffing system and why I think you should implement this budgeting method into your payday routine. The very first thing is that you have better control over your spending. So with the cash stuffing system, you have a fixed amount to spend within each category. So essentially this forces you to prioritize your spending and also stay within budget, because once an envelope is empty, you can't spend any more in that category. The second point is that managing cash and sticking to your budget actually improves financial discipline and commitment. Because you're using cash rather than continuously swiping and tapping your debit or credit cards, you are essentially less impulsive and more mindful about your spending. And studies have actually shown that when you use cash to pay for things, it actually activates the pain receptors in your brain, making you more aware of your spending. The third point is that the system is very flexible and non-restrictive, so you can really adapt it to your current financial situation. For example, let's say I have dinner plans with my friends one week, so then I'll put money towards my dining out envelope, and then the next week I'll put maybe a little less. Budgeting in general is pretty flexible, so you can make changes to your budget based on what your priorities are. I know that people may think that we are straying away from cash to digital, but personally I think cash will always be around. Technology does sometimes fail. I've had many instances where the debit or credit card machine wasn't working, so I had to pay with cash. So those are just a few benefits of the cash envelope system that I can relate to. Now we'll dive into what supplies you'll need. So if you're first starting out, I recommend a binder or wallet of some sort. This was actually my very first Accordion folder with all of my different envelope categories. So I still have my very first set of cash envelopes that I got from an Etsy seller. I don't normally use them for cash stuffing anymore, but I like to use them to store all of my business receipts. So these are the different binders that I have that hold all of my cash envelopes. I know it's a lot, but as you get more into cash stuffing, you'll kind of know what works for you and what doesn't. So I'm just going to show you my high priority sinking funds. So you're going to want some envelopes with your categories on there. You can actually get envelopes from Amazon and they do come with their own pre-made labels. And you also want a simple pen and paper to write down your budget. You can also get custom cash envelopes from Etsy, or if you want to go even simpler, you can even get these white envelopes from the office supply store. This I just used for my 100 envelope challenge, which I haven't started yet, which I will eventually start soon. I'm going to link all of the products down below for you guys, but as you become more familiar with this system, of course, you can upgrade all of your budgeting tools. You can upgrade to more specific envelope categories, as well as maybe invest in a budget planner or whatever it is that will help you on your budgeting journey. Now let's set up our cash envelopes. So it's pretty straightforward. All you need are your envelopes and a pen or marker. You will then want to figure out what categories you tend to overspend in and what categories you are willing to use cash for. I know some people prefer to use cash for things like gas and groceries, but personally, in my experience, I used to use cash for those things, but I prefer the self-serve option more just because it's a lot faster. So I only use cash for my sinking funds. So as I'm setting up my cash envelopes, I'm gonna look at my previous month's bank statement to see what categories I typically spend in. From there, I'm gonna write down all of my labels, and as you become more familiar with the system, you'll kind of know what categories work for you and what doesn't. Now that you've set up your cash envelopes, now we're going to set up a sample cash envelopes budget. So the very first thing that I do before I get paid is to write down all of my bills using a monthly calendar. This is such a good habit to have just so you don't end up missing a payment. I like to set this up just a month before. This one is specifically from my budget planner bundle, which I can link down below, but you can pretty much print out any monthly calendar on the internet. So I'll go through all of my bills and then I'll write them down on the dates when they're due. And I also like to write down the amounts right next to it. From there, I like to jot down when my paydays are, just so I know what bills I need to pay for. Next, I like to calculate my paycheck using a paycheck breakdown sheet. This one is specifically designed for cash budgeting, but really you can just use any simple pen and paper. Hey guys, it's voiceover Marianne, and here I'm just showing you my entire process for cash stuffing. So here I'm just using the paycheck breakdown. This is just a sample bi-weekly paycheck for a 2-person household. So if you notice that the numbers are a little weird, that's just because I came up with some random numbers. So here I'm just writing down all of my bills that are due for that pay period, and then I'm just going to be calculating my entire total just so I know how much I have left over after bills. And here I'm just going to go through all the cash envelopes that I have inside my wallet, and here I'm just setting a budget for groceries and gas, which I use my card for, and then I'm going to give myself a budget for my coffee envelope and my kindness envelope. I'm not going to be setting a budget for my going out and my personal spending envelopes just because I want to set aside cash for my sinking funds. You can absolutely skip this step and you can go all in and pay off debt with whatever money you have left over, but if you're like me and you want to be prepared for future expenses, then I highly recommend sinking funds. To calculate your sinking funds, you need to know the cost of a future expense and when you need it by. From there, you're going to divide the total cost by the number of months until the expense occurs. This will give you the amount you need to save up in order to reach that goal. Now that we've figured out our budget, we can now move on to our cash breakdown sheet. This is where I figure out what denominations I want to withdraw from the bank. I then go ahead and fill out my teller slips. Shout out to my bank tellers. They're really impressed every time I give them my bank slips. Then I go ahead and put my teller slip inside my bank pouch, and I go ahead and drive to the bank to get my cash. And this part is really satisfying. I really like the sound of people counting their cash for some reason. Now, if you've seen any of my cash stuffing videos here on my channel, I typically use a makeup palette tray that I got from Amazon to separate all of my denominations. I'm going to then go ahead and refer to my cash breakdown sheet, and then I'm going to cash stuff all of the envelopes inside my wallet, and then I'm going to go ahead and cash stuff all of my sinking funds. You can create as many sinking funds as you like. I know some people like to have a vacation binder or even a home binder. Currently, I have 3 binders in my cash stuffing system, one for high priority expenses like annual subscriptions and medical costs, another for my low priority items such as hair appointments and planner supplies, and a third one for my savings challenges. Great thing about this system is that you can really get creative with your setup. I get so much inspiration for different envelope categories every time I get orders from you guys, and some of you come up with the most interesting categories. So what about leftover cash? So one way is to put the remaining cash towards your next pay period. The second way is to put it towards savings goals, any extra debt payments, towards retirement, or any investments. You can also use it to build a buffer in your checking account, or even use it as a little treat for yourself. So what about when you're dealing with unexpected expenses? I highly recommend you create and maintain an emergency fund. This acts as a cushion just in case you end up losing your job and you need it for living expenses, or you need to pay medical bills, or any repairs that you need for your house or your car. So this fund should cover at least 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses. So one way to do this is to, of course, budget and see where you can cut down on your spending, just so you can allocate funds towards your emergency fund. And if you don't really have an emergency fund set up, then you can absolutely use your sinking funds for your other savings goals, but I don't really recommend you do this unless you really have to. You can always replenish these savings once everything is back to normal. Now I have 4 tips for you guys to help you stay on top of your budget and your cash stuffing journey. The tip number 1 is to keep all of your receipts. You can actually scan your receipts using an app called Receipt Jar if you're Canadian. I have a referral code down below. If you use my code, you get 200 points and I get 200 points, so it's a win-win. But if you're from the United States, you can use an app called Receipt Hog. Tip number 2 is to use envelope trackers. So these ones are for my shop, and I like to keep track of my cash envelope balances, what's going in and what's going out. Tip number 3 is having a miscellaneous envelope or a buffer inside your checking account. Personally, I like to use cash for my buffer just so I don't end up using it. This kind of acts like a little cushion just in case things come up. You can also borrow from other envelopes, but I don't really recommend doing this unless you really have to. If you do go over budget in a certain category, then I suggest that you kind of adjust your numbers a little bit the next time you budget. If you don't have your budget figured out right away, that's totally fine and it's completely normal. I'm continuously working on my budget and I still go over budget sometimes. So just be more kind to yourself. Eventually you'll get the hang of the system, you'll be more disciplined, and eventually you'll reach your savings goals. So how do I stay motivated? The very first thing is to know your why. Yeah, it takes a lot of discipline to make the system work, but you really need to remind yourself why you started budgeting in the first place. Is it financial stress that you're trying to avoid? Is it trying to pay off debt? Are you trying to save up for your future goals? You also have to determine what your goals are. Do you want to build an emergency fund? Do you want to pay off debt? Do you want to build up your retirement? Do you want to pay off your student loans? Whatever it may be, figuring out your goals just gives you a sense of purpose. Another thing that helps me to stay motivated is pretty things, which is why I decided to invest in more aesthetic budgeting essentials. Of course, you don't have to do this. Personally, investing in these things just helps me to stay motivated, and it makes the process a lot easier and more fun. So that's it for my guide on the cash envelope system. Now we're going to answer some of your guys' questions. So I did a poll on Instagram asking if you guys have any questions for me, and Angelica asked, silly question, but can this be done without actual physical cash? So of course it's not a silly question at all. I actually know a few people who like to cash stuff using prop money. I think it's a great way to get a visual of where your money is going. So another way is to actually set up separate savings accounts or checking accounts. So every time you get paid, you just transfer money from your main checking account and allocate funds towards each of those accounts, if that makes sense. Katie asked, how do I start saving to get 1 month ahead on bills? So to get 1 month ahead in bills, you're going to want to calculate your monthly bill total. So you're going to have an envelope dedicated to your 1 month ahead goal. And then every time you get paid, you're just going to allocate funds towards that envelope until you reach your goal. I also have a 1 month ahead bundle. It includes a simple step-by-step guide on how to get 1 month ahead. It also includes a bill tracker as well as 10 envelopes and 10 envelope trackers for each of your monthly bills. And finally, Carolyn asked, how to successfully have bills envelope for online bills. You can either have one cash envelope dedicated to all of your bills, or you can have a separate envelope for each. From there, you can deposit that money to the bank once your bills are due. I recommend just depositing the entire amount just so you don't end up making multiple trips to the bank. Or you can even have a separate checking or savings account where you can transfer funds from your main checking account to your bill account. That way you don't touch it. And that's it, you guys. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I really hope that it helped you in some way. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Turn on that notification bell to be notified of new videos, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye! Every person could be you though.